Hello there. Let's talk about learning webs, a very good idea. But before we do, here's a quote by British novelist Neil Gaiman. And he said, "I've been making a list of the things they don't teach you at school. They don't teach you how to love somebody. They don't teach you how to be famous. They don't teach you how to be rich or how to be poor. They don't teach you how to walk away from someone you don't love any longer. They don't teach you how to know what's going on in someone else's mind. They don't teach you what to say to someone who's dying. They don't teach you anything worth knowing." Well, I could add to that and say they don't teach you, for example, how to raise a mortgage or even how to open a bank account. They don't teach you how to balance a budget. They don't teach you about personal integrity. They don't teach you what's expected of a lover, and they don't teach you how to fix quarrels. They don't teach you anything about the non-material world. In fact, as Gaiman says, they really don't teach much, basically. Gaiman called all these real-world skills because they operate in the real world as opposed to the academic world, which is a law unto itself, really. It doesn't seem to have much connection with everyday living. I mean, what use is it knowing the kings and queens of England or the presidents of the United States and so on? One very witty lady, journalist, I can't remember her name, but she said, "Trust me, there's no algebra in real life." And yet school is geared to all these things which are really rather pointless unless you intend to be a university professor. Educator and writer Ivan Illich described the existing educational system basically as an advertisement for the status quo. It was there to persuade you why you needed what you'd already got. They didn't want innovation or progress or development. Me personally, I call the schooling and educational system child abuse. I don't think of it as any less. You lock up children in their formative years for 10 or 12 years, no escape. You force them to listen to a whole bunch of garbage. You pump their heads full of things that manifestly don't work. I mean, just look around you, watch the news, pick up a newspaper, and you'll see the world is critically dysfunctional, and yet we're forcing our kids to learn the same old garbage that we did. It doesn't make any sense at all if you think about it. It's a slave system, basically. And one of the things that's going wrong with education is that teachers are more and more answerable to bureaucratic bodies like trustees and financial boards and examining bodies, and more there's interference from the corporate world and their issues and what they want fixed. There's very little emphasis, if at all, on what the student might want or might care about or what the student needs. What's happening, unfortunately, is this very dysfunctional system is blowing off more and more of the good teachers, those that care and those that really can teach. They have a great difficulty being inspiring and getting the best out of their students because they themselves are just basically depressed. The whole system is so horrible, and many of my friends, to be honest, have just quit. That's the way that it goes. Ivan Illich said the whole system really, and it's a funny phrase, but he just described it as bridges to nowhere. And I think that sums it up rather well. Listen, let me tell you my wife Vivian's story. This is with permission from Vivian. When she left school, or when she came to the end of her school days, she was told, of course, you'll be a secretary. Well, she's a girl. They're all secretaries, or they were in those days. Anyway, there was a howl of protest. This finally got fixed. The headmaster, bless him, called her in and said, "Well, what do you really want to do?" She said, "I want to do art. I want to do fashion." She's a highly creative person. She's an academic disaster, but very clever and very creative and very persuasive. So anyway, long story short, she got to a local art college and started to do well. She, in fact, knew more than quite a few of her teachers. See, she'd been designing and sewing up clothes for her dolls since she was about 6. She'd been doing them for her friends from the age of about 8 or 10 for their dollies. And by the time she was 12, she was making her own dresses, so she knew how these things work. She had a tremendous natural native ability. And when she got to college, she found she knew more than some of the tutors there. For example, pattern cutting. She was very good at it, and found herself teaching others. Anyway, when she'd finished there, she was accepted for the Royal College of Art, very prestigious. She was chosen among 12 people from the entire world. There were thousands of applicants all over the world. They chose just 12. Vivian was one of them, but straight away it threw her in a quandary, because at the same time she was offered a really good job with a French fashion house. I mean, you know, she was already in demand, and largely because of the prestige of the Royal College, she decided to reject the job and go to college. She got her master's, but you know, she's really always regretted that, basically, because she didn't learn much, as she said. I mean, she spent a lot of her time teaching the other pupils things that she already knew, and some of the tutors were not so hot at, and she lost out on the job, the real world opportunity, if you like. Now, I can be smug, and I've got reason to be grateful, because, you know, if she'd taken the job and gone off to Paris, she'd probably have been wined and dined at the highest levels, met some rich prince, and I'd never got to meet her. So in a way, it worked well for me. You know, maybe some things are meant to be. But that just points up really how valueless the existing system is. You see, Viv has a bachelor's and a master's, and yet they weren't much good to her in the commercial marketplace. It's commonplace now that folks with 2 degrees can't get a job. You know, some of them are just, you know, they're driving cabs. So we need something new, and Ivan Illich came up with this idea long ago, by the way, 1971, long before the internet, long before the World Wide Web as we know it today, long before social media. Ivan Illich proposed this idea of learning webs, where people who were knowledgeable and could teach could be paired up with people who wanted to learn on their own terms, not as a forced part of an educational system. As I said, Illich wanted to take it down. He wanted to de-school society, and I'm still very much in line with that. It would be great. And just think of the tremendous benefits if we did that. You know, all the huge savings of, you know, the costs of expensive buildings, college campuses, universities and prefectures and things like that, the salaries for teachers. Listen, if you factor in travel as well, and travel for their pupils, you could save society a whole bunch of monies just by following this very simple model. Well, as I said, he didn't even know about the internet. Now we have the internet, which makes this sort of thing really rather easy. You know, we can link up people all over the world, and as I said, we just have to match up those who've got something with those that want what they've got. And the point is, the student will decide what they want to learn. You know, if you're teaching medieval Latin, and those students want to call you and say, please help me, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you it's not very worthwhile in today's marketplace, basically. Now, I want to steer this directly away from some of what's going on in the internet right now. You're probably aware of the wholly and totally evil goings on at Google. They are a very corrupt and very sinister organization that are trying to basically force people to believe what they think is politically correct. And for example, they won't allow anyone to publish what they call, you know, quick cancer cures. I mean, they took my site down, even though, you know, I've got 4 degrees, I've been professor at 2 universities, some little snot of 18 or 19 had the power to say, we don't, you know, you can't cure cancer, this is not orthodox, people are not entitled to see this, and removed any reference or trace to it. The same with problems with vaccinations. The mere fact for these little toads that a large number of fully qualified, skilled and knowledgeable doctors say, look, there is a problem, we've got to start looking at this, didn't wash with the Nazi leadership in Google. They took away all reference to vaccination problems. You try Googling it now. And then, you know, worst of all, I don't know if you know, but just a couple of weeks ago, they took down an entire website called Natural News. Why? Because it said something favorable about Donald Trump. You know, maybe here's a guy that's going to help reform medicine and so on. The Google snots didn't like that, so they trashed the entire, they couldn't trash the site, but they took away all references to it. There were no leads, and when you searched on Google, this site would not come up, even though it was the major news site up to that time. Listen, there are 170,000 pages on this site. It's enormously powerful and influential. So, and then listen, don't get me started about social media. The trouble with learning on things like social media is it's run by idiots and fools and failures, as I call them. To become a star on Facebook, all you need is no job. You just sit around playing all day, posting and liking stuff. So the very people that command the most number of links and likes are the very people who are useless and worthless and spend, some of them, up to 6 or 8 hours a day fooling around on Facebook. That's the last place to learn anything. All you're going to get is what we call collective think. It's pretty well the same as mob rule. It's mob ideas. There's nothing useful and nothing sensible out there at all. So anyway, as I said, we need to drive this by student needs and desires, not what people think is politically correct or politically incorrect for that matter. We want to show people how to create for themselves an epic life. And that means having a large body of real knowledge, things that really count, the secrets of prosperity, for example. And I don't mean all that law of attraction garbage that's out there. I mean real knowledge of how you do it, the steps to take. We call these hacks or rubrics, and it's steps that you follow which will give you the kind of outcomes you're looking for. And we can show people, as I said, how to fix relationships. We teach them about the mind and memory and why memory in the past can be so disempowering. What we've learned over the years is that knowledge itself, data itself, is almost as healing as mind work or psychotherapy or any of those things. Because it enables a person to know what's going on, and then they can figure things out. At the very least, they won't make any more mistakes from that point forward. But in fact, we find that a person can then reverse engineer the past and come up with better responses to the things that have happened to them in the past. Lots of knowledge of that kind, practical living knowledge. I called it healing knowledge at one stage in my writings, because it would heal things. If you know the real things and things that, how things really work, how they can go wrong, you can fix them and get real healing in life. So there's no reason for people to go around with broken relationships and hatreds and failures at work and failures at study and a poor self-image, negativity. All of those things have causes, and the causes can be fixed. And once you know and eradicate them, listen, the person is then free to go out and create the kind of life they want. We have the tools we can share. And this is a very important concept. It's one of my sayings that knowledge is being. We are what we know. That's what makes us what we are. In the very simplest, I say a plumber, being, I am a plumber, in other words, being, is by what you know. You know how to solder joints, you know how to lay piping, you know all the kinds of drainage and things, the things that plumbers know. That's what makes you what you are. On the bigger scale, the more knowledge you have, the more powerful and capable a person you are. I suppose at the extreme high end of the scale, you'd have to say there's God who knows everything, and he's all powerful and potentially can fix anything. It's kind of a joke, but there is a point to it. The people who know the most are the people who get the best results, and basically they get the best outcomes. We want you to change your world. The whole teaching of Supernoetics is that conditions, the surroundings in which you are, can be changed. Despite all the evidence to the contrary, and despite the teaching to the contrary that you're stuck with what you've got, you can change it. Now let me do another tasty quote, this time from English wit George Bernard Shaw. I think about the only person of his stature as a wise wit is Mark Twain. He was clever. So anyway, George Bernard Shaw had this to say: "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man." Well, of course, that was the day and age in which he wrote. Now we'd say man or woman. But you get the point. He's thinking man as human, really. So the whole idea, as Shaw said, we want you to learn to adapt the world to yourself. Now that doesn't mean, raping and abusing the environment and stealing the future's resources and so on. These are the actions of a mad person. In fact, to get the very best for yourself, you have to take care of everything else, all the other people, other life forms, the planet and its resources and so on. So I'm not teaching a selfish strategy. I'm teaching a highly intelligent, as clever as you can get strategy, basically. The college of life in the fullest sense. But when you're done with that, if you graduate there, and we can help you do that, then you can move upstairs to what I call the college of the cosmos. And that's what's going on in the non-material world, the spirit world, the higher domains. There's a lot of excitement and a lot of new discovery there too. And we have some terrific procedures and protocols for accessing that. I'm talking about things like telepathy, out of body, remote viewing and so on. All very fascinating stuff that science is not even interested in. Science says it can't happen and therefore it doesn't. Well, we know it does. I call this domain, this non-material domain, the outer world. The inner world is the physical, and the outer world is the non-material. Now science wants to say, well, that's the delusional world. No, actually the physical world is the delusion one. When you actually get down to it and start examining what matter and energy is, it all begins to fall apart, basically. It's not really the way it appears. I mean, we know, for example, that this table on which my hands are resting is an illusion. It's 99.9999999999999% nothing. So my hand should just pass through it. It doesn't, but the point is we know there's nothing there. In mathematical terms, there's nothing there. It's such a tiny amount of anything. So the idea of a table is a total illusion. Anyway, listen, I'm not going there. This is just to talk about our learning webs. And I'd like you to come on board, basically. When this is announced, and it will be very soon, we want to start connecting people with people. The first round of exchanges is going to be about teaching supernoetics stuff, like, for example, our brilliant constellation of accord, what we call the 12 channels of being, a whole structure that we call the complex of self. It's really we have so much good stuff, fascinating stuff to teach. I'm sure you'll love it. And we want to connect those who want to know more about how life works and how to improve your outcomes with those who already have some of the data. Okay? I'll be at the top of the pile passing it down, but I want it to spread outwards very rapidly in what we call a cascade learning system. It cascades downwards and downwards. Okay? All right, so learning webs. The Supernoetics Learning Web. I'll see you on the inside. Thanks very much for listening.